Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Out of Right Field with JP. I'm your host JP here, and today we are going to have a twofold episode. Where first we will be discussing the failed bill of Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act that every single Democrat in the Senate voted against, all 45 of them, even though they claim to be pro-women and want to protect women. They voted to put women in harm's way and to continue to endanger women across America. So we'll be discussing that and the hypocrisy around that. But then also Angel Reese is in the news again for claiming that the WNBA is about to go on strike if they don't get paid more money. We'll be discussing all of that and more in this episode, so stay tuned. But first, folks, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate that. Also, I put the link to my X page in the description. I'd greatly appreciate it if you'll go follow me there as well. So let's get into today's episode. So last episode of Out of Right Field with JP, we talked about Coach Tuberville's Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act that was going up on the Senate floor for a vote last week, and it failed. There was not a single Democrat that voted for this bill that would end federal funding for every collegiate athletic program, or I think any athletic program for that matter, that allowed men to play against women in competitive activities. Seems like a common sense bill to me, don't you think? Well, the Democrats thought otherwise, and every single one of them voted against it. They all voted party line. None of them came over across the aisle, and the vote failed. The bill failed, and Trump's executive order is yet to be codified into law. Now, I do think this will happen eventually, and maybe the Democrats are playing into their demise with this, and is actually going to help win this war in the long run, even though we lost this battle. Because every single Democrat that voted against this bill, the ones who are up for re-election in 2026, they're going to be in every single campaign ad that their opponent puts out against them. I think of people like Jon Ossoff, who, by the way, has daughters of his own, and he is up for re-election in 2026 in Georgia. And we saw Georgia flip back to red this last presidential election. Will he be on the chopping block because he voted against this bill? And in Georgia, majority of the people think that this was a common sense bill. And we saw that, replicated in the presidential election where Georgia turned red once again. So will Jon Ossoff be voted out because of his radical left woke voting? And this bill is just a perfect example of that. So maybe he's on the chopping block. Others, in their respective states, may be on the chopping block as well, because we see the nation going against this woke ideology. I saw a poll, I believe it was 70% of Americans believe that men should not be playing in women's sports. It's just common sense. And with the nation moving back to common sense, in 2020 with all the nonsense that went on that year, it appears that the nation kind of played with the woke ideology, and they were scared to go against it because people were getting canceled left and right. And it appears over time, the country has sort of healed from that and gone back to its old common sense ways. But the Democratic Party, they haven't at all. The Democratic Party continues to kowtow to the far left, part of their party and the extreme woke part of their party. Well, guess what? The nation is not putting up with that anymore. America is ready to move on from woke, and the Democratic Party is not. So maybe this is going to be their demise. They continue to double down, and they continue to embarrass themselves. I mean, look for example, in Trump's speech to Congress last week, we saw that he had a 13-year-old brain cancer survivor and appointed him to the Secret Service, gave him an honorary Secret Service badge. The Democratic Party did not stand up and clap for that. Not one of them, I don't think. If there were any, it was very few. But a majority of the Democratic Party, if not all of them, sat on their hands during that. But also we saw Laken Riley's family was there, and nobody from the Democratic Party stood up and clapped for them. We also saw a high schooler, a senior in high school, get accepted into West Point on the spot. No acknowledgement from the Democratic Party. They sat on their hands for that as well. And it's just, it shows that they blindly just hate Trump, and no matter what Trump does, good or bad, they're going to sit and they're going to be against it no matter what. Trump could have gone on there and said that he had the cure for brain cancer, and the Democratic Party would have sat and stayed still, and then went on the next day saying, we need cancer in this nation. He can't get rid of cancer. That's where this Democratic Party is, and the nation sees that, and that's why they lost in a landslide election, this presidential election. And if they continue down the path they're on, they're going to lose again in 2026, because these senators, these congressmen that are kowtowing to the left and the far, far extreme end of their party, they're going to be on the chopping block. And the 45 senators, all Democratic senators that voted against this Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, I think they're on the chopping block. I think they're very much on the chopping block for this 2026 upcoming election season. But let's just talk about the left's messaging when it comes to women. They appear to be so pro-women. They want every single woman in America to get an abortion. They want, men that dress up as women and act like women. They want them to be seen as women. So they claim to be, they're pro-women. They're a pro-women party, but yet they just voted to put women in harm's way by allowing men to continue to compete in women's sports. By the way, in the Trump speech to Congress that I just talked about, there was also a young girl there who was injured from getting spiked in the face by a man who was playing against her in sports. And she was there to show, like, I'm a victim. I'm a victim of this woke ideological crap that you guys are shoving down our throats and voting for week in and week out. Every single time they get a chance to vote to continue this nonsense, they do it. And yet we had a young girl who is a victim of that there in Congress to show them to their face. This is what you're voting for. You're voting for little girls like this to be injured by men playing in women's sports. And we saw it, like I said, with all 45 of them voting for this to continue. They've proven they are not pro-women. They are actually very much anti-women, and they are a joke, and they're lying to you. They're lying to you. They don't care about you, the women in this nation. They care about their woke ideological crap, and they care about kowtowing to the far extreme end of their party because they're scared of them. They're scared that if they concede and they give some ground in this area, they're going to be ostracized by their party and thrown out. Well, guess what? The nation's moving in a different direction, so you're ostracizing yourself against the majority of the country. So you pick which side you want to be on. You want to be on the sinking ship of the Democratic Party, or do you want to come back to common sense matters and be with the nation moving forward? It's up to you. Well, all 45 Democrats voted to stay on their side. So we'll see how this primary comes up in 2026, and if people like Jon Ossoff, John Fetterman, people like that, you may be voted out. And by the way, John Fetterman, people have been claiming that he's people haven't been. He's been claiming. He openly claimed, that he's kind of distancing himself from the extreme end of his party when it comes to immigration, and he's trying to be the voice of reason with his party, saying, this is why you guys keep losing, because you're voting for this nonsense at the border, and he's trying to seem like a common sense Democrat, yet he voted against this bill. So however much John Fetterman likes to say that he's, I'm the common sense Democrat. I'm not like those brainwashed other crazy Democrats. I'm the cool Democrat. Well, you voted against this bill, and you told on yourself. So let's see how it comes in 2026, John Fetterman. And if you really do want to distance yourself from the far end extreme of your party, then start to vote for these common sense bills. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to vote to keep men out of women's sports. It's actually common sense. So we'll see how this primary comes in 2026. But I would say that a lot of the Democrats that voted against this bill, I think your time is running short because the nation is fed up with it. Moving on, Angel Reese is in the news again, and this time she's getting a lot of heat because on her own podcast, she first claimed that the WNBA players deserve much more money than they're actually getting, and then also claimed that she's hearing the WNBA may be going on strike if they don't get more money. Here's a clip from her podcast, actually, where she was sitting with Dejanay Carrington and talked about this exactly. Here it is.
CBA is coming up soon. I can't wait.
Girl, y'all benefited from everything. Y'all youngins benefited from NIL.
What does that mean? We deserve more. Everybody.
I agree.
Everybody.
I agree with that.
But we got to get face the consequences.
Y'all gotta deal with something.
But the women coming in, not this year, but next year.
Yeah.
The ones coming this year will still be on the rookie contract again. The ones that the year after, they gonna get more. They probably gonna be making more than us.
Oh, they are.
I'm hurt.
They are. Like, yeah. I've been in the meetings. They are.
I need to get in the meetings.
You need to come to the
I
meetings.
gotta get in the meetings because I'm hearing like, yeah, they don't give us. If y'all don't give us what we want, like, we sitting out.
That's a possibility for real.
Yeah.
So I actually don't think that Angel Reese herself was saying that she will sit out if she doesn't get more money. But what she was saying was that apparently she's hearing that, you know, the upcoming CBA for the WNBA is right around the corner, where the Players Association for the WNBA negotiates with the WNBA on salaries and such like that. It's like the WNBA's union going to work for them. And Angel Reese claimed that she's hearing that in these negotiations and these talks that apparently there may be a strike upcoming if there's not more money given to the WNBA players. And Dejanay Carrington said that she's hearing the same thing. But what Angel Reese did say, though, was that they deserve more money, that the WNBA deserves more money for its players, which, by the way, I looked it up. WNBA players have an average salary of over $100,000. So they are very much, you know, I don't think that they're suffering. And by the way, that's just a salary, let alone, you know, sponsorships and such. You know, I would say a lot of them are making above $300,000 if you include the salary and sponsorships, at least $300,000. And that is very much enough to live on your own. Now, I would love for the WNBA players to make more money. Sure, I would love for them to make as much money as possible. However, we live in this funny thing called reality where the WNBA hasn't made a profit in its entire existence. It came to be in 1996, and it has yet to make a profit. Think about that. Not 1 year did the WNBA make a profit. And, you know, some people claim they make the joke that the WNBA is the NBA's tax write-off, which, I mean, it kind of is. If you have an organization that's not making any money, business folks, how smart is it to have an organization that continues to not make a profit, any profit at all? How smart is it to keep that organization going? It's not. It's actually not smart at all. So the WNBA continues to function with the NBA's help, by the way, to keep going when they have not made a profit in a single year in its existence. So it's funny when players like Angel Reese claim that they demand more money. We need more money. Well, guess what? The money's not there. You guys are getting as much money as you can get. Okay. Now, if you want to negotiate that, maybe you need to get a higher percentage of the revenue that's there. I'd be a bit more sympathetic to that. But just simply pounding your fist and demanding more money when the money's not there, that's not how life works. You don't get to just demand that you need more money when you're not bringing a profit. When you're not bringing a profit, you can't demand more money. Now, I will not be oblivious to the fact that Angel Reese has a bit of a draw. I think it's maybe a bit of an over-exaggerated draw because, you know, players like Caitlin Clark, who came into the league, took the league by storm. She is the primary reason why the ratings skyrocketed this last year. And just take a look at the ratings yourself. I mean, Caitlin Clark was averaging like millions of viewers per night when she was going out to play. Whenever she would go to play on the road, they would have to move the games to the NBA stadiums because they couldn't fit the amount of people in the WNBA arenas that she was going to be playing in. So Caitlin Clark was the primary drive, the primary force for how the WNBA had some success last year. However, with that success, they still did not bring a profit. But still, Caitlin Clark is the primary draw in the WNBA right now. Angel Reese, I would say, is number 2. But I would say there's a substantial gap between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. So if Caitlin Clark were to say, I'm sitting out unless I get more money salary-wise, I think the WNBA would have a serious problem on their hands. However, with Angel Reese, she's going to need a lot of WNBA players to support her for that to have much of an impact, I would say. And then again, Angel Reese isn't saying herself that she will, in fact, sit out if she doesn't get more money. She did say that she's hearing around that there may be a potential strike in the WNBA. But I would say Angel Reese would fall right in line with the strike if it were to come to pass. If the WNBA had a strike on its hands, I think Angel Reese would definitely take part in that because she said it herself. She demands more money and that they deserve more money. So I think it's fair to say that if there were an upcoming strike, Angel Reese would be a part of it. But like I said, when you have an organization that's been in existence since 1996, and they haven't made a single profit yet, that's an organization that is feeding off of the NBA. You can't demand more money when there isn't more money. And Angel Reese herself on past podcast clips have said that she's very much living above her means. So live below your means. If that means you got to sell some stuff, if that means you got to live in a more modest apartment or something, then so be it. But you can't act like you're special and get to live above your means and then demand more money. That's not how life works. That's not how life works. Players like LeBron James, players like Luka Doncic, players like Steph Curry, they can live however they want to live because they bring in the money. They are successful and they bring in the draw and the money to the NBA. So they get their fair share of whatever they bring in. So they can live however they want to live. However, if you don't bring in that money, you don't get to live like how that money demands. You don't get to live in this, luxurious apartment with a luxurious car and any clothing item that you could ever desire if you don't have the money. So it's funny to me that players like Angel Reese demand more money when she's living above her means already. That screams entitlement of you deserve that. I deserve all the money in the world, even though the money's not there. That's kind of how, this capitalistic system works. You bring in the money, then you get a fair share of what you bring in. And like I said, if the WNBA players want to say, we want a higher percentage of the money that we're already bringing in, fine. I guess, that's a conversation we can have. But if you're just simply demanding more money, the conversation ends right there because the money isn't there. And, like I said, Caitlin Clark is making millions off of sponsorships and such. She's not relying solely on her salary, but Caitlin Clark brought in the attention to the WNBA, and sponsorships are seeking her out because she's a draw. So if Angel Reese wants to, complain that she's not making enough money, maybe try to be a bigger draw. Maybe try to bring in more money, more eyes to the product. Maybe become a player that sponsorships want to seek out. That's the way around this. It's not whining and complaining and threatening to go on strike. That's not the way to go about this. The way to go about this is to bring it upon yourself to go out and get more money. That's the bottom line. But if the WNBA does indeed have a strike, I worry about the players involved in that because they could be sitting out for quite a while. Because unless the NBA, if Adam Silver comes in with his helping hand and gives the WNBA a lot of money to pay these players, like a one-time payment to come back and play, unless that's the case, the WNBA doesn't have money to give them. Their pockets are empty. So it's an interesting story to keep an eye on. Will we see a strike with the WNBA players in this upcoming season? It's interesting, but it's just comical to hear players like Angel Reese complain that she doesn't have enough money when she's living above her means and the money's not there for her to do that. So maybe she needs to look within before whining and complaining and pointing the finger at the WNBA, claiming that they're screwing her over. Well, folks, that's it for this episode of Out of Right Field with JP. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And until next week, same time on the same channel here on YouTube. Again, please like and subscribe down below. Follow me on X if you haven't already. And we'll see you guys next week.